Yeah, good morning, Wilf. Over the last few months, ever since this counteroffensive has been running, we've been covering lots of drone attacks, missile attacks, and then this week an attack on the military headquarters for the Black Sea Fleet. But of course, the Ukrainian main effort is actually to the east of Zaporizhzhia, just around Robotyne, where we see here. What the Ukrainians have got to do is break through 3 layers of Russian defensives, trenches, minefields, and dragon's teeth. And of course, it's led to a result that people think it's stalled. But in fact, that's absolutely not the case. Ukraine have been making progress, but because there's no video footage from the front line and the front line doesn't move very much, we've not been able to cover it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to try and use some time-lapse maps to try and show what's actually been going on. This is a map from the 30th of September. It shows that Ukrainians have already broken through the 3 lines of Russian defences. But if we look down here, the actual tip where they've got to, where they have broken through, they could push armour through there now and make a run for it. The trouble is that would be really easy for the Russians to close off that hole. So what they've had to do next is if we wind the clock forward now by about a week, we can see this salient has just increased slightly because what the Ukrainians are doing are pushing east and west to try and make that push south more heavily protected. It's still not wide enough, so if we now wind forward another week, we can now see the salient moving a little bit further out to the east. And in fact, even on this graph, the enclave of Verbove, there's lots of reports suggesting that actually Ukrainians have actually broken through even further east than that. What this now demonstrates is that the Ukrainians are very much on the verge of being ready for the armoured push south. And of course, the Abrams tanks, which have just arrived, have arrived just in time for that as well. But time is not on the Ukrainian side. With October, November is when the rains arrive. That will turn this whole area into a mud bath. Now, conventional wisdom would say that's when you stop the offensive for the winter. The trouble is, across in Kherson, that's exactly what the Ukrainians did. They took their foot off the Russians' throat and they allowed the Russians to recover. They'll almost certainly not be keen to do that in the winter. So what we can expect to see, even through the winter, is Ukrainians try to maintain momentum throughout the winter, despite the weather.
So making progress, but perhaps quite slow progress. And one of the factors that's slowing them down is the Russians kind of using their air force a bit more differently and better than in the past?
One of the frustrations as a former Air Force guy is that we've not really seen much of the Russian Air Force involved in this. But over the last month, there's been a massive uptick in the number of Russian Air Force sorties being conducted. 2 aircraft we're going to pick out in particular. So this is the Su-35 Flanker, a multi-role aircraft. Looks very capable, but it's about 35 years old. But it's been increasingly involved by using glide bombs that travel about 50 miles. Why are they doing that? Because it allows them to sit further back from the front line and still drop those bombs. The question is why they're being used increasingly. It could be because the Russians are running short of their missile systems, which has been widely reported. Or actually, it's just a state of Russian concern about the progress that Ukraine's making, that they're prepared to risk high-value assets. But the number of sorties has been 3 to 4 times that we've seen any time through the rest of the war. And likewise, if we look at the Ka-52, which is one of their attack helicopters, this is known, once its serviceable state, is known as a Russian tank buster. It's got twin rotors, because that means it doesn't have to have a tail rotor on the back of it. And it's caused significant disruption to the Ukrainian forces on the ground. But the Ukrainian ability to target this has significantly increased. And since mid-August, the rate of these operations has tailed off dramatically, probably as a result of Western weapons arriving and these having to operate really close to the front line. So those sortie rates have reduced, probably because Russia's desperately trying to preserve whatever assets it has and the pilots. But these are now no longer taking quite such a large effect on the front line.